And welcome into the MLB Hot Stove Daily reaction show today to the MLB trade deadline here at the Upside Sports Network. My name is Michael. Appreciate you guys making the effort and joining us this Thursday evening when we have the Hall of Fame game going for the NFL tonight. I know there's a lot of choices for your entertainment tonight, but we appreciate you guys taking the time and joining us here at the Upside. As always, make sure you guys hit that like and subscribe on the video. It really does help us out, so thank you so much for those of you who have already done so on a lot of our other videos. We gained quite a few guys over the past week anyway, with the MLB trade deadline, our coverage there. 9 hours of coverage on Tuesday, a couple of different lives on each Saturday, Sunday, and Monday, building up to the trade deadline. Took a day off, recover after the deadline, see where the fallout's at, and here we are today. You can follow us over on X at UpsideSN and on Facebook, Upside Sports Network. So let's dig in to the trade deadline reaction show. Alrighty, in case you guys missed it, MLB trade deadline was Tuesday, 5 o'clock Central, 6 o'clock East. We saw plenty of transactions. We went into the day expecting between a minimum of 15 and 20 transactions, upwards of 30 if we got really busy. And that's just on trade deadline day itself. I believe we finished the day with 32 trades overall on deadline day itself. The day before, of course, really impacted the deadline, with Kikuchi being traded from the Blue Jays to the Astros for an astronomical price that really reset the rest of the market, most notably for a guy like Jack Flaherty. That's where we're going to start our show today. What happened with the New York Yankees, with the Minnesota Twins, and the LA Dodgers when it comes to Jack Flaherty. Twins, of course, were looking for some rotation help, losing many arms this offseason as they tried to save on payroll. Eric Fedde was one option they had tried to get from the Chicago White Sox. Jack Flaherty was another one. The New York Yankees, probably the biggest team that was in there for Jack Flaherty up until the deadline, ultimately decided to take a step back. Now, the way Brian Cashman words it is that they couldn't find value that was equitable for a Jack Flaherty type. I'm not told that's what the case is here. It seems like what happened here is that they had negotiated a deal the day before. They got some medical reports that they weren't necessarily fond of. They saw the return that Kikuchi ended up getting. And so while the Tigers are looking for a higher price because of the price of Kikuchi, the Yankees are looking for more of a discount because of the concerns they now have based off of the medicals they received on Flaherty. That basically meant the value really wasn't there for both teams. Tigers were looking for a little bit more. Yankees were looking for a little bit less. So in one case, I guess you could say Cashman isn't necessarily lying here, where the value didn't really add up, but it's because of that medical is the main reason why that deal ultimately fell through. If you remember, the day before the deadline, we were talking about it live here at the Upside, how the Yankees were intensifying their talks for a starting pitcher. All signs pointed to that being Jack Flaherty being the upgrade in their rotation over a guy like Nestor Cortez, Nestor Cortez anyway. And ultimately, they were going to turn around and flip him. But ultimately, they decided, hey, we don't want to part with the pieces necessary to bring in Flaherty. We have questions about his medical already. And so while the Tigers are wanting to bump that price up, we're already uncomfortable with the price we're at. And so they decided to bow out. It sounds like there weren't too many discussions on deadline day between the Yankees and the Tigers. It sounds like it really came down to the final bell here on Jack Flaherty to go to the LA Dodgers. Now, remains to be seen if he stays healthy for the rest of the year, but he was by far the best performing rental on the market this year, the highest ceiling of the rental arms out there as well. Michael Lorenzen had pitched well so far this year, but I don't think anybody mistakes his arm for Jack Flaherty. That's why his price, of course, was just for one middle relief type of guy, 26 years old, having a great season, great strikeout numbers, but wasn't even in the top 30 of the Royals. Meanwhile, Jack Flaherty goes for two decent prospects, but overall significantly less than what I would have thought he would have gone for, given the price Kikuchi went for the night before. Just an incredible kind of a 48-hour spectacle around the Jack Flaherty sweepstakes, how it might affect the Tigers going forward, how it might affect the Yankees going forward, and of course the Dodgers really trying to keep float out there in the NL West. They have a great starting rotation once they get those guys back and healthy. Flaherty, if he's only able to pitch, say, 3 or 4 outings here, should at least bridge the gap until those guys are ready to go. If the injuries that the Yankees are worried about ultimately happen. But if they don't, Dodgers really got themselves a song here. Flaherty easily fits as their number 3, 4, maybe even their 5th best starter when all their rotation options are healthy and performing well. Dodgers, I believe, are going to be the team that's going to represent the National League in the World Series. I know the Phillies have looked great so far this year, but I'm wondering about a backslide here in the second half. I like the additions that they made, but I just wonder how good of a team they are. Can they continue to have those middle relievers pitch as well as they did? Love the addition of Carlos Estevez, but you lose a little bit out of that bullpen with Sir Anthony Dominguez, given the up and down performances he has, of course. But Strahm, of course, was an all-star this year. They had another middle-inning reliever that was also a all-star this year. Very rare to see middle-inning relievers get an all-star nod. They had 2 of them. That's part of the reason why I see a little bit of a backslide. Bullpens are notoriously mercurial. One week they'll be great, another week they'll be bad. They'll have a good couple of months, they'll be bad another month. They'll be great one year, they'll be bad the next. They're never consistent over 162 game span and then into the postseason and then doing that year over year. It's a very big ask for those guys to do so. And I wonder about the Phillies being able to keep it up at this level. Now, do I still think they're going to win the division? Absolutely. Do I still think they're going to get to the NLCS? Absolutely. I just wonder about their ability to hold on to a team like the or when you have a team like the Dodgers with, honestly, I think they have a little bit better top-end talent. I think the Phillies roster overall is probably a hair deeper, but I think the Dodgers top-end talent will probably win out in that series in the NLCS. Welcome in, Willard. Welcome in, Bink. Appreciate you guys joining us once again. You notice how the Yankees think one trade for Jazz makes them World Series contenders, but one problem they know they can't beat a good pitcher in the playoffs. They will have Corbin Burns. I get your point, is that I do think the Yankees should have done more. Jazz Chisholm, I think, really did help their offense, but to me, he's one guy. He looks like a great fit. He looks like he's really turned that team around offensively right now. But give it a week, give it 3 weeks. Is it really enough to say that they've improved the roster overall? They really added a 7th inning guy. I thought they needed an 8th inning guy who could be their closer. We were all looking at Tanner Scott. We were looking at Pete Fairbanks, those type of pitchers. Ultimately, they get Mark Leiter, who is a great strikeout guy, but I'm not sure he could hold down the 9th inning role right now if they have some struggles back there. I would have liked to see them get a insurance policy if that happens, in addition to some starting pitching and a corner infielder. I think those pieces really should have been added. I understand prices were high, but as we saw every single year, prices in that final hour really come back down to earth, and you could easily step out there and get yourself a Kyle Finnegan for the 8th inning role who can step into the 9th if you have some faltering back there in the 9th inning. Now, of course, he wouldn't have been my first choice, but he'd have been somebody to help you out in that role should the problem or need arise. There's so many guys at the first base, third base spot they could have gone to. Royals got the guy I thought was being advertised strictly for them in Paul DeYoung. He went from the White Sox to the Royals at the deadline. Really great pickup, I believe, for the Royals. He could end up playing some outfield. He could float all over the diamond, really, because the Royals need some offense, just like the Yankees did as well, and they were smart enough to capitalize on the opportunity. Willard, and Soto has problems with great pitching like Chris Sale. He struggled, so you can only imagine if the 4-game series they face great pitchers, they will lose. You believe they will lose. Again, I think the Yankees left some meat on the bone, much like a lot of teams out there. Orioles, I could argue the same thing. They should have added another frontline starter to go with Corbin Burns. I think they did a great job getting a number 3 and a number 4 in there, but my issue with them was never about the 162-game season. It was about the 16-game tournament at the end of the year. Can you get those 16 victories to win the World Series? That's where my issue is at with those teams at the deadline. Last one here from Willard here. Houston, if they make the playoffs and get pitching healthy and start getting hits, I bet no one wants to face Houston when healthy on paper. I would agree there. Houston is a really good team on paper, but a lot of that team, like I said and have been saying for the last 3 or 4 weeks now, is it's got a lot of question marks, not only with health, but of course with free agency coming up. This is really their last year to try to win a World Series. They went into the trade deadline with one glaring weakness on that lineup. They did not address that. John Singleton is not a high-quality first baseman in Major League Baseball. Is he a backup? I believe he is. He is at least a little bit better than Jose Abreu was for them earlier, but they really missed an opportunity here to bring in Yandy Diaz, to bring in a Vlad Guerrero type. There were some opportunities out there for them to try to improve there. Josh Bell, $2.25 million is what the Diamondbacks are going to end up paying him, and all they're giving up really is cash considerations for him to come onto their roster. Miami's eating the rest of it. Boy, Miami really did. I'll put it this way: Miami did Arizona a big service here by not having them pick up the whole tab there. Because remember, they put him on waivers. They were trying to offload his deal. Now, of course, he could have gone into free agency if he had passed through waivers and signed with any other team. But Arizona wanted to get the job done since Christian Walker was injured. Well, Houston, I would argue, has a bigger hole at first base, and they had every right, just like the Arizona Diamondbacks, to a guy like Josh Bell, and ultimately decided, we didn't like the price. We'll rather stick with John Singleton and go with what we got. I don't really like that strategy. Now, the Kikuchi trade, I think everybody agrees in the industry that Kikuchi is not having a great last 3 months. ERA over 6.5, last 3 weeks anyway, over 7. Not exactly coming in, guns a-blazing, we'll put it that way. They lose Bloss in the deal. I thought that would have been a tough cost, but might have been worth it for them to get a guy who's been around, might be able to handle the grind of August and September a little bit better than a rookie would, sure. But then you add a third base prospect in Wagner, and an outfield guy who's already on the Major League roster in Lou Perfido. Absolutely an overpay of epic proportions here at the deadline. And Houston, I think, is going to feel it once we get closer to September, as we get closer into playoff baseball. Are we going to see them have enough in that lineup? I think they still have some great pieces in Altuve, Alvarez, Tucker. Diaz has really come along as far as a catcher as well. But I think first base would really have solidified this lineup as far as I'm concerned. And I think that's going to be an easy out come playoff time. That's going to be an easy way for teams to try to navigate through the Houston Astros lineup. Hey, we got Alvarez here, we got Tucker here, we worry about those two guys. Hey, we go right after John Singleton. Don't even worry about throwing fastballs right down the middle. I understand it's still the major leagues. These guys know how to hit, blah, blah, blah. But he's nowhere near the level of hitter or threat that Alvarez or Tucker are. So that's where I think Houston really missed the boat here at the deadline. I still like what they have. I still like their pieces. If they're able to stay healthy, I'm with you there, Willard. It would be a little bit of a fearsome lineup. That's why I think they are still considered a World Series contending team. But when you have a big hole like that in your lineup, the other teams who are also World Series contenders might be a little bit ahead of you when you have issues of health and you have a big hole in your lineup at first base. Welcome back, Bink. Appreciate you joining us. Enjoying your Braves, I hope. Team will forget Houston swept the Yankees early in the season. Yeah, Astros have done really well as far as facing some of these tougher teams so far this year. A team that I root for anyway, the Texas Rangers, really have struggled against teams above 500. So that's one area I'd say Houston's really done well in this year. Again, the issue for them is going to be health. Can they stay healthy enough through the stretch of August and September to be able to have those guys when it comes to playoff baseball in October? John, how does the Rangers' latest trade prospects affect our 25 roster, if at all? Okay, so the trades that they made over the deadline, I guess is really what you're referring to, and then of course the prospects. The trades themselves. Lorenzen was on a one-year deal anyway. We don't really lose anything there by having him go elsewhere as far as how it affects 25. This year they get an option to go into the bullpen in Pennington. He could come out of AAA and help them in August and September, but it's more about them having an option for 25, 26, 27. That's what that trade really was all about. Now, Carson Kelly, I'm not sure if he has a year of control left. I'm not sure if he has another ARB year left or not, but I believe he does. But either way, Rangers are focused with Jonah Heim at their catcher, and if Kelly plays well, I'm sure Texas will hold on to him. If he doesn't, then they might be seeing him go out the door, much like we saw Austin Hedges type leave. Mitch Garver last year, I think, performed way above his contract with the Texas Rangers. That's why you saw him get a nice deal with the Seattle Mariners. You see this year, though, he's struggling, though, in a bigger ballpark, tougher place to hit home runs. And, I think Texas would love to have a guy like Mitch Garver back as a 1-2 punch to give some time off for Jonah Heim, but Carson Kelly hopefully can do that for Jonah the rest of the way. As far as the Chafin deal, that's the one I think might hurt them a little bit in the long run. Really like the starting pitcher prospect that we sent in that one. I think he was 27 in our system. I can't remember the name off the top of my head. But Texas might feel that one in 3 or 4 years. I don't think it affects anything, though, as far as 25, 26. As far as the playoff chances, Texas needed to add a lefty, a strikeout lefty. They have a couple of long relief lefties out there, but they didn't really have anybody they could go to face a guy like Yordan Alvarez or a guy like Tucker in a postseason series. Now they have that guy in their bullpen if they want to go that route. Not saying you still wouldn't try to, face Alvarez with a bases empty situation no matter what anyway, but now you have an option to go to that you didn't necessarily have before. But again, I worry about that piece in the long run. Willard, if Houston wins the title this season, do you think Houston cements themselves as a dynasty? To me, Houston already is a dynasty. They're at the very end of their run right now. Cementing their dynasty, I think, is already done. I think if they win this year, I think that's just one more jewel in their crown, if you will. Do I think their dynasty, quote-unquote, is tainted? That's a bigger question. The banging on the trash can thing, the sign stealing thing. I know it's part of baseball and teams do that and every team tries to work an advantage, but I think even Houston fans would agree that they kind of pushed the envelope a little too far there. Do I think it's as egregious as, say, betting on the game back or betting against your own team or anything like that? No. But I do realize that it did have an effect on the field during the game. It wasn't necessarily a monetary thing outside of the game, but it did affect the play of the game that wasn't necessarily available to other teams they played against. I'll put it that way. I think there's really good things Houston has done during this time, though. I wish they could have gone without having the cocky attitude that they had the entire time. Otherwise, I probably would have rooted for them a little bit more. Up until this recent era of Houston Astros baseball, I rooted for them as probably my 4th, maybe 5th favorite team in the entire game. Texas was my number 1. Minnesota and Atlanta, probably my 2, 3. Chicago Cubs at a certain point were my number 4, or the Houston Astros. But the whole George Springer and Carlos Correa, the way they, kind of had their cocky attitude, their air about them the entire time, the second they came up, it was just very off-putting. It was very different from the days of Moises Alou, Richard Hidalgo, Jeff Bagwell, Craig Biggio. Those were very, especially Biggio and Bagwell, Biggio to me embodies this kind of a selfless player, complimentary, doesn't say the wrong thing, very good type of a role model player, whereas Springer and Correa, very different types of role models. very brash, the bravado, puff your chest out, bang your chest. That's just more of the modern game, I suppose. But it was just very off-putting when they were starting their rise ahead of schedule from what the SI article was in 2015, 2016, 2017, whenever that was, when that article came out, and just unfortunately lost me as a fan for that entire quote-unquote dynasty. I wasn't able to enjoy it as a former Astros fan. Now that those guys are gone, I'm starting to enjoy the team a little bit more again. And hopefully, as they continue to get away from that type of player and that era of baseball, I might be able to cheer for the Astros a little bit more. By the way, there was no proof that Houston used trash cans in the 2017 playoffs. There was. Sorry. It's just, I know you're an Astros fan, but I think even you would realize there's some stuff going on. Now, whether or not it was every single time, every single at bat, doesn't matter. If something was going on that shouldn't have, it was wrong, and that's all that needs to be said. Not saying anybody needs to be banned from the game or anything like that, but I think we all realized something was amiss, and that's pretty much the long and the short of it. Alrighty, let's get back to wrapping up the deadline here. We've talked a little bit about the Yankees and the Dodgers, the Jack Flaherty news there. One other bit of news that I want to touch on, kind of a missed opportunity here, is for the Minnesota Twins. They were a team that were really waiting for to try to address their starting rotation. Ultimately, they add Trevor Richards about an hour or so before the deadline. They were the last team to make a trade before the deadline. And ultimately, I think it's going to cost them. They needed to get some more innings in there. Going into the year, this was not expected to be a great year for the Minnesota Twins. The first month of the season did not go well. And then this team really has played way above their heads the last few months anyway. Turned their season around. They're in second place, I believe, in the AL Central right now. I think because of the missed opportunity here at the deadline to add a rotation arm, even if it was just a fifth starter, a sixth starter. Remember the Mets, we kind of crushed them a little bit during the deadline about their addition of Blackburn at the deadline. Somebody like that, even just somebody who could come in and eat, 3, 4, 5 innings, give you at least some reprieve, would have been better than nothing. And that's what the Twins really did to their rotation. Richards, obviously, I believe, is going to go into that bullpen. Has some starting experience, but he's going to be a reliever in that system there. But to me, it was a real opportunity for them to try to keep this team afloat, as they've really relied on that starting pitching and some of their top-end relievers to get them to where they are now. The gas is going to run out of that tank eventually, and I just think there was an opportunity for them to address it at the deadline, especially when you saw what the price of Blackburn was. You could have easily gone out there and gotten a guy like Quantrill or Gomber, somebody at the back end of somebody's rotation. One of the poor starters for the Oakland A's, a stripling even, would have been a decent upgrade. There are tons of starters that didn't get moved that I thought had a decent chance to move here at the deadline that ultimately didn't. Chris Bassett didn't, even though the Blue Jays could have saved some money there. Snell didn't move. Anderson didn't move. One guy that the entire industry was expecting to move, Zach Little of the Tampa Rays, ultimately stayed there in Tampa. Those are all guys who are available at the deadline. Twins could have made that opportunity there. One last team that I want to mention here that missed a boat here at the deadline, and that's the Atlanta Braves. Atlanta really could have used a starter here. Same reasons that I mentioned for the Minnesota Twins there. Could have used a starter, ultimately did not. The one bit of news that I will say is that the Twins were in there for Eric Fetty. I'm not sure why they didn't get the deal done when you look at the pieces that ultimately went back from the St. Louis Cardinals to the White Sox in return for Fetty. I mean, almost the entire return came from the Dodgers, and I guess maybe they're just that enamored with the pieces that they're getting from the Dodgers in addition to Oliver Gonzalez. But my goodness, Twins, come on. $7.5 million for a starter the rest of the way this year, and $7.5 million for next year. That's a bargain in any market, and you're going to have some more innings next year as well. Would have been an easy fill-in for that rotation to probably give yourself a number 2 or 3 type starter in Minnesota's rotation. For St. Louis, I think this really solves their problems going into the postseason, or going through the rest of the year and hopefully to the postseason. But there was an opportunity there for Minnesota to get something done, and again, they weren't able to get it across the finish line. So that's kind of where we'll start today. We'll check in on a few other headlines. We have seen some updates as far as injuries. Westberg had a hand fracture. Astros designated Rafael Montero. Mike Trout is done for the year. Surprise, surprise. And it sounds like Scoball trade was never really close at the deadline as well. So that's kind of your headlines from around baseball over the last 24, 48 hours. Not too many headlines here. More about just teams trying to wring their hands. Missed opportunity here. Could have done this. Should have done this at the deadline. Well, now those decisions are done. Those GMs are now going to be focusing on trying to keep their guys healthy enough for a postseason run or to see what their young guys have down the stretch here. Then we'll get into the offseason and so forth, and it should be a great hot stove season this offseason as well. Scott Boras is going to have plenty of clients out there that are going to command significant salaries. That's going to be one thing we're going to be hoping for, is that we see a lot more activity than we saw this past offseason as well. So overall, this deadline, we saw, 32 trades overall. That's more than we were expecting as far as a quote-unquote maximum. Really like what we did see on deadline day. The build-up to deadline was really nice as well. Earlier in the season, we got the Luis Arraez trade. We got the Dylan Cease trade. Those were really, really nice. I really like to see teams kind of push their chips to the middle like the Orioles did while still holding on to some of their guys. I still think they could have done more. And there are teams that sold really well here at the deadline. The Marlins, I think, really came out well here at the deadline. They traded, 7, 8 different players off of their roster. I also like the way the Rays did it by trading significant pieces off of their roster. I still think they could have gone 4 more players off of their roster. Fairbanks, Diaz, Lowe, and Lettle all could have been gone, and they could have even done more than that. But those are the pieces I would have traded in addition to what they already did. But the Rays and Marlins did really well at the deadline. White Sox, because of the Fetty deal, I'm going to give them a little bit of a downgrade. I thought they did fairly well up until the deadline, and then they just kind of threw their hat in the middle of the ring and said the heck with it at the very end. End up saving money on the Eloy Jimenez deal to Baltimore. They end up giving away Eric Fetty for a song to St. Louis. I think there was a better opportunities there. We saw what happened last year at the deadline. They didn't like the prices they were getting for Dylan Cease, so they pulled him back off of the market. Same thing happened with Garrett Crochet, and I think they were so focused on that Garrett Crochet deal, they just let Eric Fetty slip through their fingers. $7.5 million for a above league average starter. Honestly, I think he's in the top 20 so far this year in the American League, for sure in the American League. That's a real missed opportunity here for the White Sox. Even if they just held on to him through the end of the year, I think they would have been better off just holding on to him rather than giving up Eric Fetty and that contract for what they ultimately got in return. So, missed opportunity there for the White Sox. Now, if you paid attention through the rest of our video after the deadline, we gave you some predictions for the second half of the year. We gave you our predictions for who would win the division, what the wild cards would come down to, who would make it to the World Series, and our predictions for the World Series. And I got to be honest, my pick to make the World Series out of the American League and ultimately win it has me a little bit worried. Rangers ultimately decided not to add to this lineup, and now that Evan Carter's been diagnosed with that stress reaction, and now the timetable is not just August or mid-August or late or early September, it's through the entire regular season. He's not expected back. That leaves me a big question mark, especially I'm guessing because Chris Young probably knew that going into the deadline. You're not going to have Evan Carter back before the end of the year. Jankowski's been below average as far as a hitter so far this year. Tavares has been as well. The rest of your lineup has been a little bit stop and start, and and Adolis Garcia is way below what you expected him to come into this year. You're getting Josh Young back, but you don't really know what he's going to be like, especially after missing so much time the last 2 years. I was hoping they would add a bat. Now, you guys, if you were paying attention during the live, I questioned what bat would really fit this team. Well, with Evan Carter, we didn't know that he was going to be out the rest of the year. I would have gone for sure for an outfield bat. I would have called up Oakland and said, hey, Brent Rooker, I know you really weren't looking to move him there at the deadline. You pulled him back off the market a little bit. I'm willing to overpay a little bit now because I have a chance to really win a World Series here with a rotation that features guys, assuming they're healthy at the end of the year. DeGrom is your one, Scherzer, Eovaldi, Molly, Heaney as well. Gray's going to come back as a bullpen option. You have Urena, Bradford, and Dunning. You have so many pitching options. You have pitching, I believe, locked down to be able to compete in any postseason series. But this offense is really showing its colors right now, and I wonder if they're going to be able to get it turned around. Evan Grant of the Dallas Morning News did a great piece on the Rangers offense, showing how 3 of the bottom 67 qualifiers, I believe, On the American League side, our Texas Rangers, looking at Jonah Heim, other pieces that are performing well below what they're expected to here at the major league level, and or at least were what they did last year, or in comparison to other major leaguers this year, shows you just how much meat is left on the bone for that Rangers offense. And with Evan Carter being out the rest of the regular season, I would have gone after a Brent Rooker, and so I wonder if that's a missed opportunity here. I'm sure with prices being higher, I'm sure they tried to add somebody, but I mean, you got to get the deal done. Chris Young has been great so far as the Rangers GM. Hats off, first GM ever to get the team a World Series, to get the Texas Rangers a World Series victory. That does not go without saying. That's absolutely fantastic. Always going to be thankful for that, etc., etc. But at a certain point, you have to realize the offense isn't working. You're not going to get back one of the big pieces you were hoping for. You're missing some production in center field. You move Langford over. You bring Rooker in, or at least give more playing time to guys like Ezekiel Duran. Maybe the bat plays up. Maybe that's the route they ultimately go. Putting Ezekiel Duran in the lineup a lot more, moving Langford over into center, playing Tavares a little bit less. That could ultimately be the route they choose to go. We shall see. But appreciate you guys taking the time to join us once again. We'll be live with you guys again tomorrow night. Make sure you guys join us. We had a great day at work today. Surprisingly, I got out on time, was able to get home, still had some energy. I didn't have to take an hour just to kind of recoup. And so I didn't have to wait till 9 o'clock to start our live tonight. I went ahead and started a little bit early. But we shall see what time I start tomorrow. Usually we try to start these around 9 o'clock in the evening during the week. So tomorrow will be our last show of the week, and then we'll be back on Monday. Make sure you guys hit that like and subscribe if you haven't already. Appreciate our very active chat. Willard, I know you're a staunch Astros fan, and I'm more than willing to debate you as much as you want on those issues. But I think we can both agree that the Astros are still a very good team. They have a chance to win a World Series this year. The Rangers are a good team. If they get their offense right, they have a chance to win a World Series this year. And hopefully we have some great baseball the rest of the way. Bink, I hope you're brave. Stay healthy the rest of the way. That health is going to be a big thing in that rotation since they did not add a starter. And for the Astros, I hope John Singleton performs a little bit better than what he has in his past because they did not add a first baseman. We shall see if they do. But John and I, our Rangers fans, will be hoping that offense turns around. Really hope you guys had a great day watching us with the trade deadline on Tuesday. Enjoyed your Wednesday off. But hopefully you're enjoying some baseball tonight and tomorrow as well. We'll be live again tomorrow evening at 9 o'clock. Be sure to hit that like and subscribe. Follow us over on X at UpsideSN. You'll be notified when we go live. And y'all have a great evening.